Well, good morning, everybody. On this blustery November day, I'm Gord Steinke. I'm very honored to be your host once again today. And as retired Honorary Lieutenant Colonel, 15th Field Ambulance, I'd like to give a very sincere welcome to each and every one of you today to the 12th edition of the No Stone Left Alone ceremony. And we're here at Beechmount Cemetery again in Edmonton, Alberta. We're very happy to welcome many students and guests back in person this year. Thanks so much for coming. To kick things off, I'd now like to introduce Elder Rick Lightning, who will perform an honor song in acknowledgement of this event taking place on Treaty 6 territory.
Thank you. I'd like to do this song on behalf of the nations, of the tribal nations across Canada, of our members that went to war, also our members of the RCMP and the Air Force, that these people that went to war of our people across Canada. This is their song as well, of all members that went and never come back. So thank you for inviting me to do this honor.
Thank you so much. Well, just as our program was beginning, you saw a procession into the cenotaph area. That was the students from Riverbend schools, led by dozens of cadets and members of the Edmonton Police Service Pipes and Drums. EPS Pipes and Drums have strong connections with our local military. These ties date all the way back to the First World War, when members joined Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. They would pipe the soldiers onto the battlefield. Now please stand if you're able as we hear the Centennial Elementary School Choir sing, "O Canada." Thank you.
Color party, halt! Like that, left, hard! Order! Colors! Then that! East! Then that!
The purpose of today's ceremony is twofold. It's being broadcast to students all across Canada to pass on the importance of our military history to Canada's youth and also help them understand why it is so important to remember. The second focus, and the one that really makes a connection for young people with those who have served, students in attendance here today will lay poppies on the headstones of more than 4,000 men and women who are served in Canada's armed forces and are buried here in the field of honor. This act is repeated in over 150 locations across Canada as the No Stone Left Alone Foundation works to honor all of those who have served. And that includes from British Columbia to Newfoundland and communities in between. It's projected 70,000 poppies will be laid by November 11th, with 13,000 students all taking part. And I just want to say a special thanks to students from St. Anne's School who painted stones of remembrance and then placed them on some of the markers here at Beechmount ahead of today's ceremony. Now, this year's ceremony is dedicated to all those who served in critical battle in the Second World War. It was 80 years ago, Canadians led the way in the raid on Dieppe. Nearly 5,000 set out for the French coast on a mission to gain experience and test equipment that would be needed to eventually win the war. Less than half returned, with 916 killed and nearly 2,000 captured as prisoners of war. Despite these terrible losses, valuable lessons were learned that led to the success of Allied forces in the D-Day invasion 2 years later, which was the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe. I'd now like to welcome Maureen Bianchini-Purvis, the founder and president of No Stone Left Alone, to read a letter, and it was sent on behalf of the Governor General of Canada. Maureen?
First, I'd like to thank you all for being here today on this beautiful Canadian winter day. I really appreciate that. I have the honor to read the letter from our Governor General and Commander-in-Chief, Her Excellency Mary Simon, who is our patron. As November 11th approaches, there are many opportunities to pay tribute to our men and women in uniform, to show our appreciation to our veterans, and to honor the memory of those who fell in the service of our country. We owe a great debt to them and to their families. The pages of our rich military history are replete with acts of bravery and displays of courage, but they're also filled with emotion, suffering, and devastation. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the Dieppe raid, where nearly 1,000 Canadians lost their lives and thousands more were wounded. Events like the No Stone Left Alone ceremony remind us not only of the importance of remembering the extraordinary service of our soldiers, but also of the true cost of war. By keeping alive the memory of the sacrifices of the past, it is our hope that we might look forward to a peaceful future, which is why it's incumbent upon each of us to continue our duty of remembrance. I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who is helping to make this morning's event a success. I especially commend the young Canadians who are taking the lead and participating in this initiative, either live from the Beechmount Cemetery in Edmonton or watching the ceremony in their classrooms from coast to coast to coast. Our youth are amongst our most effective drivers of change and are a source of hope and an inspiration to many of us. I am confident that by working together, we can build a stronger foundation for a more united, peaceful society. Lest we forget Mary Simon.
Thank you, Marie. We're also very privileged today to be joined by Her Honor, the Honourable Salma Lakhani, the Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, to say a few words.
Thank you, God. I would like to acknowledge all our First Peoples who have called this place home for thousands of years and who welcomed us here to make our own lives. May we always dwell together on these lands with peace, respect, and understanding. good morning and hello to all the students and teachers here in Edmonton and those who are joining from across Canada for this special ceremony of remembrance. I know it is very cold, so thank you for being here, and this makes us appreciate even more what our women and men in uniform do in their line of duty. They do not have a choice about what the weather is and whether they should go out and perform their duties. So to all of our wonderful students taking part, I would like to ask that you keep something very important in mind as you place your poppies today. I would like you to think about how you and young people around the world today enjoy a truly precious gift thanks to the sacrifices of our fallen heroes. You are free to question, to explore ideas, to express yourselves, and to choose what you believe. You are free to learn and to create whatever future you imagine for yourselves, regardless of your culture, gender, ethnicity, or religion. You are free to live in peace. And remember that this is not the case in every part of the world. For generations, our men and women in uniform have bravely stepped forward to serve, so that young people like you from around the world are able to enjoy the blessings of peace, freedom, and human rights. We can all show our gratitude to those who served by taking part in ceremonies of remembrance like this one, and by committing each and every day to make the most of the gifts they fought for through our own thoughtful citizenship. I believe that our heroes would be extremely proud to know that future generations are continuing their mission to make our world a better place for the benefit of all people. As His Majesty the King's representative in Alberta, I offer my most heartfelt gratitude to all of our Canadians in uniform for their tireless service. I would also like to thank the teachers among us for your sustained commitment to ensuring that our students have the knowledge, the encouragement, and the confidence they need to achieve their fullest potential. Finally, to those among us who are grieving a fallen hero, may you find comfort in knowing that their proud legacies will continue to live on through wonderful programs like this one. To that end, I would like to acknowledge the deep commitment of Maureen Bianchini Purvis to the success of this initially local but now national and even international program, for which she was invested into the Alberta Order of Excellence. Maureen, it was a real honor for me to invest you in the order. Thank you for making it possible, through the No Stone Left Alone initiative, for us to honor our fallen heroes. May they all rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, before our next speaker, I want to acknowledge some of the people who you see here every year, who are among those we are honoring here today. They are the Color Party, those who carry the flags for this ceremony, and they're all veterans of our armed forces. And combined, they've served 251 years, and they've done tours across Canada, as well as in the Sinai Desert, Golan Heights, the former Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, and in Europe with NATO. Please join me in a big round of applause as we say thanks for their service. We will now hear a special message from General Wayne Eyre. He has served in uniform since he joined Army Cadets at the age of 12. Today, he's the Chief of Defense Staff, and that makes him the head of all branches of the Canadian Armed Forces. And he's responsible for 68,000 regular force and 27,000 reserve force members. Let's listen.
Good day, everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm General Wayne Eyre, Canada's Chief of Defence Staff. And the first thing I'd like to say is thank you. Merci. On behalf of everyone serving in the Canadian Armed Forces, thank you from the bottom of my heart for participating in this year's No Stone Left Alone ceremony. The act of placing a poppy on a grave may seem small, but its meaning, what it means to us, is deeply significant. When you multiply that act, when thousands of students place thousands of poppies on graves from coast to coast to coast, it becomes an incredibly powerful and moving expression of commemoration. Je pense qu'il est également important, en cette journée, de souligner et de reconnaître le service et le sacrifice des vétérans qui sont toujours parmi nous, ainsi que le service et le sacrifice de leur famille, and to salute their commitment and dedication to Canada and Canadians. I encourage you to listen to their stories, to learn from them, and to reflect. There are no longer any veterans of the First World War with us. Veterans of the Second World War are becoming fewer and fewer. Leurs sacrifices ont été consentis, j'imagine, avant la naissance de bon nombre de vos grands-parents. Et au fil des années, ces sacrifices sont de plus en plus loin dans le passé. But the things all those Canadians stood for, that many of them died for, endure today. Freedom and justice, human rights and the rule of law, the essential dignity of every individual. Ces valeurs perdurent et méritent d'être défendues. Que vous soyez un membre actif des Forces armées canadiennes en mission à l'étranger ou un étudiant dans une école ou une collectivité ici au pays. So many Canadians have served our country with courage, resolve, integrity, and an unshakable sense of duty. Characteristics we should all aspire to emulate. I invite you to draw inspiration from their examples and embrace their spirit of service before self. Take up the torch and hold it high. And once again, thank you for participating today.
Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Brigadier General Steve Graham, Commander, 3rd Canadian Division. The Brigadier General's military career began in 1987 when he joined the reserves. He served tours in Bosnia and Afghanistan, and he took over command of the 3rd Division earlier this year and oversees 12,000 Armed Force members.
Hey, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, on this cold, frosty Alberta morning that in many ways seems so appropriate for the reason we're all here today. Your Honor, Ms. Sherry Clark, ministers, chiefs, commissioners, veterans, guests, and of course, Maureen and Randall Purvis. I'd like to build on what the Chief of Defence Staff just spoke about, how with another Remembrance Day approaching, soon Canadians from coast to coast will gather at cenotaphs, large and small, and pay their respects to the men and women who gave their lives over the history of our country to maintain the freedom that every one of us enjoys here today. Some people will think about and remember a specific friend or a relative, while others may say a quiet thank you to all soldiers, not knowing anyone by name. But regardless, no matter where you are, they will all hear and repeat those same words that we say every year. In the going down with the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. And as we gather here today amongst the graves of those who died serving our country, it's worth considering how in fact will we remember them. It's one thing for a family to remember a loved one, a father, a mother, an uncle or aunt or grandparent, or maybe a friend that was killed in service. But how does a country collectively honor the vow that we make every year to remember them all? In 1899, Canada deployed troops to South Africa in what would become known as the Boer War. It was the first time in our then young country that we sent military forces outside of our border. But it would not be the last. And over the past 123 years, Canada has repeatedly stepped up whenever there is a need to fight for what we believe is right. The Great War, World War II, Korea, peacekeeping missions, NATO service, and of course, most recently, Afghanistan. But for fighting for what is right, fighting to keep Canada free, it's come at a huge cost. And over those 123 years, almost 120,000 Canadians have been killed in the service of our nation. 120,000 is a huge number. It's a number that's hard to comprehend, and it's easy to become numb to. But we need to look beyond that number, and we need to remember that these are 120,000 individual lives that were lost. 120,000 young people who did not get to grow up. They did not get to get married, have careers, and do all the things that we here take for granted. Each one of those men and women has stories, and they have histories for us to learn and to reflect on. There's also 120,000 families that were torn by the grief of losing a loved one due to circumstances they will never fully know, and created a tear in this nation that will never fully heal. So as we sit here today looking out over the headstones and we reflect on who these people were and the futures that they gave up, it's normal to feel a profound sense of loss. And yet, we should also feel an incredible respect and pride for what they did for our country. They sacrificed their own hopes and dreams for us, and that's what we must remember. I go back to the question I asked earlier. How does a country collectively remember all these 120,000 people? And that's why I'm so pleased to be here today, to see children and young people, to be part of No Stone Left Alone. What Maureen and Randall have done is to create the conditions so that we can remember those that have fallen, so that the names and the faces and the stories of each and every one of them can be learned and passed on and retained as part of our history. That's how we will honor their memories and their sacrifice, by providing our youth the opportunity to learn who they were, what they did, and the incredible cost that they paid. We must never take what they've done for us for granted. And so, as the Chief of Defence Staff just did, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here, and I ask you each, please, put in the effort. Learn the stories of who these people were, who died serving our country, and then tell those stories to your friends and keep them in your memory. And that is how we will remember them. Thank you all very much.
Important message. Thanks so much, sir. Earlier, I introduced you to our color party. We also want to take a moment to acknowledge our honor guard today. And the soldiers here, just to my left, the Honour Guard is composed of soldiers in D Squadron from the Lord Strathcona's Horse Royal Canadians, which is the Armoured Regiment based here in Edmonton. Soldiers in the Honour Guard have been deployed in operations around the world, such as Afghanistan, Bosnia, Latvia, and the Middle East. Now, in addition to overseas deployments, these soldiers have deployed in operations right here at home in Canada, assisting with relief from natural disasters such as wildfires and floods in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. Please give me a warm round of applause right now to thank them for all their service. I'd now like to introduce our guest speaker for today, and that's retired Lieutenant Colonel Shane Schreibers. He spent 28 years in the Canadian military with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. He did tours in Cyprus, he did tours in Bosnia and Afghanistan. Schreiber is also an author and military historian.
Thanks, Gord. Good morning, everybody. The theme of this year's No Stone Left Alone Remembrance activity is Dieppe. A generation ago, I had the honor of spending some time with Denny Whittaker, an amazing Canadian hero. You really have to go Google him once you thaw out. He led a company from the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry onto the beach that fateful morning 80 years ago. Born in Calgary, he was educated at the Royal Military College and in fact was the quarterback of the Hamilton Tiger Cats in 1938 when he took his commission to be an officer in the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry. During the Second World War, among his other accomplishments, Whittaker was awarded the Distinguished Service Order at the rank of captain for his achievement in the Dieppe raid. Of course, I asked him about his experience at Dieppe, and he shared with me his story. As a fellow infantry officer, I hung on every word he spoke. It rang with such truth, such insight, such sublime irony. To close the story, after his harrowing escape from the collapsing beachhead, he told me about being awoken from his exhausted slumber very early the next morning after the failed raid. He had been ordered to report to General Headquarters in London for a meeting with Churchill and the senior commanders to discuss the raid. Whitaker thought that the messenger was crazy. He was just a captain, a fairly junior officer. Surely there must be someone more senior that should go. But the messenger insisted that he had been called for by name, and so Whitaker cleaned himself up and headed off to General Headquarters, thinking it would be a colossal misunderstanding. It was only when he arrived, a lowly captain in a room full of generals and ministers, that he realized the truth of it. Out of the more than 100 officers that had landed on the beach and fought their way into Dieppe that day, he was the only one that had made it back unwounded. He was one of the few surviving witnesses that day to the tragedy and triumph that was Dieppe's. And he would share his story and that of his fellow soldiers at Dieppe as an act of solemn remembrance, of honoring those who did not make it off the beach that day, of passing on their memory, their experience, their truth, down to the next generation, down to me. And now I have the honor of passing that truth on to you as we are gathered here today in our act of remembrance. In an era of alternate facts and deep fakes, acts of remembrance like today are more important than ever, because this is how truth is passed on. This is how history will survive, and has always survived, from person to person. Denny Whitaker shared the story of his truth at Dieppe with me, and now I share it with you. He passed the torch to me, and now I can pass it on to you. Be yours to hold high. Thank you for being here today, to bear witness to truth, to honor it by action, and to keep the flame of history alive.
And thank you for those thoughtful words. Thank you, Shane. We're now going to hear the commitment to remember. This is being read by students from Cedar Hill Middle School in Victoria, BC.
We are students of Cedar Hill Middle School. Today, we'll be reading a poem called Commitment to Remember.
Commitment to remember.
They were young as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves.
To them we pledge amid the winds of time to carry their torch and never forget.
We will remember them.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks so bravely singing fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders field.
Well, that was Chloe Thomas from Middleton Regional High School in Middleton, Nova Scotia, reading In Flanders Fields. Well, every year, students who take part in the No Stone Left Alone ceremonies are asked to write letters of reflection to talk about their experiences and what they've learned. And each year, one letter is chosen to be shared with all of you, and this year's was sent in by Carly Mix, who's from Eco Old High School here in Olds, Alberta.
No Stone Left Alone is an incredible experience. You are educated on how devastating the backstory of Remembrance Day actually was. Sometimes it's overlooked, but when you really dig deep into the origins, you can be moved immensely. One of my favorite components of the program was the physical placing of the poppies. It was important to me because it was quite the historical moment. Seeing all the headstones adorned with poppies was enlightening and a special experience. I appreciated it because other people might not have had the privilege of being part of such a remarkable time. No Stone Left Alone brought many different feelings close to my heart. I felt content, knowing that even though the veterans are no longer with us, they are being honored as they should be. Sadness fell upon me as I put myself in the shoes of people who lost loved ones. During the reading of In Flanders Field, I felt the ability to look back and remember when I recited those words at a Remembrance Day ceremony a couple years ago. Overall, I would say that No Stone Left Alone is a grand opportunity, and it should be carried out annually for many years to come. I hope I can contribute in some way next year as I did this year in placing the poppies.
Well, the next part of our ceremony will be familiar to many of you, though some of the students watching may not know why we observe these traditions. So today, when Remembrance Day happens, we're going to hear a military bugler play the last post. It traditionally signals the end of the day and serves as a tribute to the fallen. We will hear a signal to mark the beginning of 2 minutes of silence. It's a time to reflect and a sign of respect for those at home and abroad who have served in times of war. That silence will be broken by the playing of the lament to commemorate Highlands regiments. And finally, the bugler, one more time playing the rouse to signify waking up to a new day and the resurrection of the spirit of the fallen.
Color party, attend, color, carry colors.
We now ask that those of you watching in attendance at Beechmount to please rise as we start these events with Father Jim Corrigan, Vicar General, Catholic Archdiocese of Edmonton, and Lieutenant Navy Reverend David Jackson with the prayer of remembrance.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. We gather this day to offer our profound thanks for the freedom that is ours to cherish and to love. In a particular way, we offer sincere gratitude for all those who made the ultimate sacrifice, those children of God we honor this day. Lord God, we ask you to bless our young people and us with the grace of gratitude for the freedom those we remember have made possible for us. And we always be thankful, Creator God. We ask your blessing on our young people, the many poppies, that today will assist us in our mission of no stone being left alone. We offer our prayer always through the way, the truth, and the life, your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. We will remember.
Respecting the freedom of conscience, religion, and beliefs of each person, I invite you now to take a few moments in silent reflection or to join me in the prayer of remembrance. Eternal God, Creator and Sustainer of all, we remember with thanksgiving the faithfulness, bravery, and self-sacrifice of all who fought and labored for our deliverance, and, above all, for the memory and high example of those who, counting not their lives dear unto themselves, laid them down for their friends. May the memory of their devotion ever be an example to us, that we may not break faith with them. Sovereign God, bless our sovereign Lord, King Charles, and all those in authority under him. Give them wisdom, guidance, and counsel, that by their endeavors, peace, order, and good government may be upheld. Almighty God, stretch forth your almighty arm to strengthen and protect those who serve in His Majesty's Canadian Armed Forces. Support us in times of war and in times of peace. Keep us from all evil, giving us courage and loyalty, and granting that in all things we may serve honestly and without reproach. All these things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
I can't. Where? I can't see him.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. Color party, order! Colors! Stand down. Hey!
Thank you, Warrant Officer First Class Adam Van Bosselen. That was the act of remembrance. We were hoping for a fly past the two CF-18s. They really wanted to be part of the ceremony, as they have for the past 12 years, but the weather not permitting, so we're hoping for next year. That's from the 409 Squadron in Cold Lake. The laying of the wreaths is an important part of a remembrance ceremony. We will begin with the honor of Her Honor Lieutenant Governor Salma Lakhani on behalf of the King. On behalf of Canada, the Honourable Michael Cooper, Member of Parliament for St. Albert, Edmonton. On behalf of the Province of Alberta, Rick Wilson, Minister of Indigenous Affairs. Pardon me, that's Steve LaCroix. There's been a few changes because of the weather. On behalf of the City of Edmonton, Councillor and Deputy Mayor Karen Principe. Brigadier General Stephen Graham on behalf of the Canadian Armed Forces. For the RCMP, Deputy Commissioner Curtis Zablocki. Rick Lightning and Inez Lightning of Masquachis on behalf of Treaty 6 territory. On behalf of the families of the fallen, Miss Sherry Clark. In remembrance of Dieppe, Caitlin Corbold, board member for the Juno Beach Center Association. I'd like to invite the next three up. Dave Basham, District Commander, Alberta and Northwest Territories Command, Royal Canadian Legion. On behalf of the Last Post Fund, Mr. Hans Brink. And for the Aboriginal Veteran Society of Alberta, Chuck Isaacs. And on behalf of No Stone Left Alone, Maureen Biancani Purvis. Okay, thank you so much. Now, if everyone can please now stay in place as we begin the poppy laying portion of today's ceremony. Our guests of honor will lay the first few poppies, and I'd like to invite Her Honor, the Honorable Salma Lakhani, again, Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, joined by Brigadier General Steve Graham and No Stone Left Alone President Maureen Bianchini Purvis to come forward. And poppies will be laid today by students from Riverbend Junior High School. And again, I'd like to just mention about 4,000 service members are being honored here at this cemetery today. And I'd just like to ask our guests to remain where you are just a little bit longer here as the students begin paying of respect.
Time of year, our servicemen and women whose sacrifice made clear there will be no stone left alone. I see my grandpa flying high as he forged on through the sky, and my uncle who came back without his mind. And though I feel blessed, there's grief weighing on my chest. There will be no stone left alone. Underneath the blood and dirt, I see how young they must have been. Outwardly they're strong, but inside they're trembling. The world's history etched into their skin. There will be no stone left alone. I see my grandpa flying high as he forged on through the sky, and my sister who came back without a limb. And though I feel blessed, there's grief weighing on my chest. There will be no stone left alone. I walk into the cemetery, everyone is here again. The children clean the headstones, the old tell stories about the names. I lay my puppy down and the others do the same. There will be no stone left alone. I see my grandpa flying high as he forged on through the sky, and my brother who came back without a friend. And though I feel blessed, there's grief weighing on my chest. There will be no stone left alone. I lay my puppy down and the others do the same. We won't stop till there's no stone left alone.